Hello.
Hello, Ashna. Good morning.
Good to see you. You'll see a lot of familiar faces you'll find here, Ashna.
Hello, Ashna.
Hello,
Hello, Harsh. Hello,
Can you
Ashna.
recognize Kenneth from New Zealand? Can you recognize him? He was there in Brockwood.
No, I don't recognize Kenneth. Yes.
I recognize you, Harsh.
Oh my goodness me. I'm new to this Zoom thing. Just a moment.
I'm also new to this. Yeah.
Actually, Harsh, we are all new to it.
Yes.
We're 1 year veterans, so for the past 1 year you've been at this relentlessly. Thanks.
So lovely to see everyone. Oh my goodness me. Hi, Ken.
Hello.
Yes, Kenneth remembered you, Ashna. He remembered you.
Yeah, he remembers you. It's nearly 2 decades back. But have you met, Kamalji, have you met Ashna earlier? Because she's been to our center.
I think we may have, Ashna. We may have met at the center, maybe.
Okay.
Oh my God. I can see Harsh. Oh
Yes.
my goodness.
Right.
Hello, Ashna.
That's right.
Wonderful.
The nice
I'm in
presence.
Dehradun. Yes.
See, Kamalji is bringing the world together. Yeah, so lovely.
Oh, yes. You know, Harsh, I sent that, I'll be sending that around to you as well. I sent around a brief note about all the participants. And I did that only so that we would get to know each other before the program. And it was so fascinating to see those descriptions. I mean, it was
Yuga's on. Hello, Yuga. Can you
I
hear
didn't
us?
receive it, so I'd love to if you could
Hello.
send it to me.
Hello, Yago. Hello, Yuga.
Hello.
Have you got a young bodyguard with you behind?
She's my student, but she's leaving now.
I know. Hello. So, good morning and good evening to everybody. I think it's wonderful. Sunday, it's everywhere. It's Sunday for us, really. So that's a great day for us to be together. And for those who are here for the first time, just a quick recap of how we're going to do this session. Kamalji will introduce the topic and take us through the proceeds for the afternoon. But some couple of quick admin rules. We'll try to keep ourselves on mute unless we try, and we'll use the hand. If any of you are on the computer, you can use the hand. If you know how to use the hand, otherwise you can just lift your hand, and that's fair enough for me to unmute you. You can unmute yourself. And it's a free flow conversation, which we'll have for the first 45 minutes. And at noon, 12 o'clock Indian Standard Time, we'll have a small 15-minute, 17-minute film. And then perhaps we can do a wrap up. So with these few words, I think Kamalji is going to introduce some of us so that we're meeting for the first time, and then we take the topic forward.
Yeah.
So welcome
So
again.
maybe I think just to sort of, perhaps those who are new to this program, because some of us have been meeting quite regularly, so we know each other. But I'm very happy to welcome Kenneth from New Zealand. And we came into contact because he wanted some books to be sent to him. And we just said, Kenneth, would you like to join the program? And he said, yes. So it's really wonderful to see him here. And wonderful to see Ashna, Harsh, just by chance, because yesterday Srinjoy said that Harsh may join. So that was a really welcome participant. And so it's so good to see people, I think, from all over the world, actually. And I think it's wonderful to see that. It was never intended that way. But it just happened that we have a good cross-section of people across geographies.
That's right.
So just to give you an idea of how this has come about, essentially, for some time, we've been having speakers on our programs. So we've been having either Mark Lee or Michael Mendiza or somebody or the other. They've been talking. And, we've been listening, and, we've been asking, some have been asking questions. So those interactions have been very good. But I think after a while, perhaps because the speakers are also limited, we didn't want to have programs with speakers just for the sake of having programs with speakers. And then just by chance, one of our friends here, he suggested that, that we should have something that Krishnaji himself suggested. It is not just good enough to listen. At some point, all that must become part of you. Otherwise, there's really no point in it all. So that is how we started our first session. that I think was a couple of weeks, I think on 6th June, I think it was, probably 6th June, yeah. When we had a program where we looked at the issue of clarity. I think somebody specifically wanted to discuss clarity because he said unless one has clarity, the platform to function isn't available. So that's what we tried to explore first on the 6th of June. And then out of that program, some things came up and we thought we'd identify them for this discussion. And of course, the same group were invited and we just put it out in the general mail as well. So we have some new friends as well. And the two things that came up, particularly in that discussion for today was, I think a couple of friends said that there is a huge contradiction between my inner life and my outer life. I mean, what I show to the world and what I am. So we wanted to really address that because I think there is a sense that we listen to a lot of things, but it doesn't seem to have any transformative effect. I think that's how I read it actually. It may be that, in fact, it was Gautam who raised that. Maybe that's what he had in mind, that there is a big contradiction in my inner world and the outer world, how we present. And the other thing that, was also competing for attention as part of discussion, I think it may just come up, is that the role of thought in all this. Perhaps, that was one other thing that cropped up in that discussion. So maybe I think, we could start off with the first one, which is, something that we all identify with. The fact that I think that most of us feel that there is sometimes what we are in our own closed lives is so different from what we project outside. So that's just to give you the brief background of how this discussion was planned, and it's very informal, and it's nothing. It's really an issue of a meeting of friends. So I think there is no need to feel that do I know it all or do I not know it all, because I think Krishnaji's teachings are incidental in all this. I think the reality is the reality of our lives. I think so. Keeping that in mind, I just thought we can now open the floor and move on to the discussion. As I said, it's a candid, informal chat among friends. So anybody can make a start.
Mr. Tanka, would you like to join in?
I'm just new to this meeting. I would prefer to hear what other people have to say before I say anything. So if you don't mind, but...
yeah, you can chip in later whenever you like, Harsh.
I'll chip in. I'll definitely chip in. But, yeah.
I think, where it actually, in fact, I could just, this is just to set the ball rolling. A couple of days back, actually, Hyuga, you'll see Hyuga on the screen, he's from Japan. And he has an interesting background. I think his mother is Spanish, father is Iranian. And then he went to Japan to teach martial arts. I think there's a particular form of martial art which he teaches. And he became very fond of Krishnamurti. So a few days back, he had sent a very nice film link called Tashi and the Monk, which I think I sent around. It's a lovely film, and it led to a discussion with Hyuga, and we talked about how in a world of humanity, how distorted it is, even though sometimes the outer looks so orderly. And he mentioned that in the context of Japan, everything seems so orderly, but he says you'll be surprised to see the extent of disorder that is there in the inner consciousness, so to speak. So, I just loved the discussion. So I wrote an article on it and I put it, we have a website, so I put it in our blog, just 500, 600 words or so. And so the idea was, anything that brings us to talk about some of these issues that we feel about. In fact, maybe we could ask Gautam, because Gautam brought it up actually last meeting. Gautam, would you like to lead the way, Gautam? Gautam is a filmmaker. He makes films, videos, so he's got all sorts of talents.
Well, good morning and good evening, wherever you are, everybody. Probably what I was thinking, and we we understood what teachings is all about. I mean, what K is saying, that we can understand. But the question comes when am I able to inculcate into my system? Am I able to leave those teachings? That's the big jigsaw puzzle. I think everybody, all of us, we are facing that. So what Kamalji is saying, the contradiction with our inner world and outer world. And as we know, everything is here. What I do, what I become, what I think, how I behave, everything depends on this. My neurological patterns and system, my thought patterns. And time and again, K was saying how to put brake on our thoughts. So that's why I was talking with Kamalji. As we know, K never said how we will do that. He never said about the antidotes, but he just placed the mirror. So, but at the same time, we know that that it is said that his, I mean, antidotes are hidden into his teaching. So my point or my question or my searching is that have you found some antidote? Then let's talk about that. How I have applied that. How you have applied that into your system. That's the that's the key thing. What I believe. So that was my point. So let us explore and let us dissect that. I think I don't know whether I am making sense or what.
No, you are, Gautam, because that's the question we keep asking all the time. But the question which you are helping me to ask is that even if there is this perception that I need to have changed, I'm aware that there is something amiss, whether it's by virtue of conflict or by virtue of the disequilibrium or the imbroglio or the noise, but it is my perception. So it is the same mind, the same me, the same Mr. Mukherjee. I am seeing it as two perspectives, what it should be and what I am. So and I keep going through my whole life, and whether the quantum of that perspective is changing or decreasing or increasing in my total, my jar, the whole content of myself, that remains the same. I'm still juggling with that whole thing. It's my perceptions, my feelings, it's my understanding. And perhaps, obviously, I'm refining this by getting to understand what is happening through the outside world. But it's again me, right within me. I haven't changed intrinsically very much. It is only that I'm trying to change because I think that it's going to be, again, that's another, it's a subjective element. So I think for me, I'm just saying this in my sense of a limited understanding of what I've gone through with my life pattern. I keep saying that it's not that out of frustration I'm giving up hope that change cannot happen. But if I am living with that moment of what I am with awareness, I will not ask for a change in that sense of the term, where I'm not going to say that the world is going to change, obviously, and I'm not saying I'm going to change for the world, but I live with that content of this disequilibrium or whatever I call it. So perhaps even because K is to say that that can only happen if you are completely, you dissolve yourself and start afresh and anew and all of that. And that's not so, I mean, it's not so easy for a person who's so consolidated. I'm a consolidated human being. So I think it's very difficult. It's a pertinent question, but it's very difficult for a person at various stages of his life to take it forward with the expressions and experiences he or she has done individually. Because each of us have had different experiences in our format of living, all of us in different parts of the world, whether it's in the psychological domain or in the physical domain. Each of us have had this, this ride, which is at times it's quite productive because then we feel there's so much of contentment and happiness and fulfilled. And at times we feel that there is so much of discord, there's so much of melee, there's so much of pain, and you're identifying, you're dissociating, you're being with it. So why not just accept everything the way it is? I'm not going to say I'm not going to change, but I'm not going to force myself to say I have to change because that is the way forward for my living. I'm not saying this in theory. So I just thought I'll add that. Gautam, your question stands here. So Deshna, you want to say something? No.
No, a little later.
Okay. No, I thought I saw your hand go up.
If I may respond over here.
Yes, Sanjay. Yes, yes.
Yeah. See, there are two terms which I came across in the previous two speakers. One was, how do I inculcate the teachings in my life? And in the second speaker, I came across the whole idea of the problem of the I, the problem of the self, and the self as an accumulation. And it seems to me that there is an intrinsic problem in both these approaches, because if we refer back to Krishnamurti himself, first of all, there is nothing to inculcate, because the whole idea of inculcating something or imbibing something, once again, involves time, involves effort, and also perhaps involves some kind of a structured change, which is not at all what Kay was talking about. Also, there is a book by Kay in which is titled "Do Not Make a Problem Out of Anything." I don't know if all of you have read that, but it's not a problem. The I is not a problem. I mean, unless one views it as a problem. I think it's a question of conditioning and deconditioning. I mean, there is the conditioned state, but as the famous philosopher Alan Watts used to say, if I am aware, I may be unaware. Even Kay has, I think, in Kay's dialogues, this has come about. I may be unaware that I am afraid, but if I am aware that I am unaware, then I am aware. Mm-hmm. So just to be aware of one's fear, and I think this is a consistent thread in the teachings and in most of the discussions that I've been part of for a few decades now, is that the very awareness of the fact transforms it. So I think that's an interesting thing to dwell upon, that can awareness of fear actually transform fear, or can awareness of the conditioning of the self actually act upon the self and transform the self. I think that's a point we could continue from.
Well said, Sanjay. Yeah.
On the issue of the self, actually, I mean, one of the things that, I mean, I personally, this is a personal view, is, when Krishnaji, I think the heart of his teaching is that he's talking of the cessation of the self. So not the transformation of the self. So the sort of transformation that he is talking about is something that, I think that perhaps escapes us all, because for us, it's just a modification, a means of improvement of something that is there, which itself is a construct. So I'm just wondering, Sanjay, I think, whether part of the problem is that we actually shy away from that, the brutality of that truth, actually, that the self is a construct. And this is just a thought. I found very often that that's something that keeps resurfacing, in my mind. And very often, in our discussions also, we look at everything, we discuss everything, but we are not really willing to discuss the central issue of whether the self is a construct. Because then it actually perhaps lays the ground rules for the transformation. So it's not a transformation in that sense, but it's a cessation of something that was itself a construct, then allows for something else to happen. This is just to put something into the discussion.
Correct.
And just let me add on. And what is self? To my mind, all my thinking is self. And Case time and again is saying how to bracket our mind. So am I able to do that? Yeah, we can see, I can see, yeah, I am thinking. So maybe I can put a break button for just for a few seconds and then again. So that's the question. And I told about inculcating. Yeah, that's maybe the wrong word. It's not imbibing or inculcating. I am aware of that thing. But ultimately, as a little conscious person, I want to, I mean, awareness is, yes, that's I am, yeah, I can say I am aware. But at the end of the day, am I able to hold this thing, or am I able to hold your hand or something like that?
Gautam, the moment you spoke of this, it reminded me of a very beautiful Zen teaching. A Zen master was sitting with his disciples and they were meditating.
You're talking about Chokaksui.
No, I'm not talking about Chokaksui. I'm talking about one of the older Zen masters. Chokaksui was the person who started pranic healing.
Pranic healing, okay.
No, I'm not talking about him. So one of the disciples came up to him and said that, Master, I'm having a lot of thoughts and what do I do to remain in a thoughtless state? So the response of the master was that there is no need to be in a thoughtless state. Why do you feel you have to be in a thoughtless state? All you have to do is you have to transform your attitude. Is that you watch the thoughts just like a grandfather watching his grandchildren playing. I found that I found that statement very, very powerful. That you watch the thoughts just like a grandfather watching his grandchildren playing.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, Sanjay. But where I get stuck up, I mean, I come back to my previous, I get stuck up where moment I'm doing it, it comes as if I'm doing it consciously. So when that conscious and part comes, like when I'm seeing something extraordinary, that whole feeling comes automatically. I'm not telling myself that I'm getting into a state to see an extraordinary sunset or an extraordinary feeling. It just happens. So when the conscious element comes, it should, to me, I feel at times it should happen so organically, and so it shouldn't happen with that a feeling that I'm doing it either with a purpose or with some kind of where I dissociate myself with what I actually am. So if I'm not in that state of fulfilled, or I'm not in, I'll just get Joyita in. If I'm not in a state of tranquil, I am in that state. I'm not trying to run away from that state. I'm not saying I'm going to justify that state, but I am in that state. I'm in that state of, I know subconsciously I might feel that there is a state which I'm not happy with, or I'm not what I shouldn't be in that state. But the fact is I am in that state. Now, if I tell myself that I should be in a state which is not this state, I should be in a state of tranquil. I must be in a state of control of my sensory organs. I must be in a state of associate myself with pain and suffering around. But that it doesn't work for me. I get caught up. The moment I think about it, then I say that perhaps I'm not doing it in the free flow of what the situation demands. So I failed miserably. I mean, and at this stage of my life, I keep asking the same question. It's a very pertinent question, which Kamalji asks: why are inner and outer worlds so contradictory? Because I'm perceiving it with my own perception, what my inner world is and what the outer world is. No one is defining my outer world for me. It's my perceptions. And that is getting furthered with each passing day, because either my realizations are growing or my knowledge is growing or something is growing, but that gap still remains. It's a question which really needs addressing.
Yes, Amit.
Welcome, Joyita.
Thanks, Shandy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kamalji.
It's good you could join, Amit, despite
Yeah, good, good to have
the
you,
fact that you
Amit.
couldn't sleep well, but you still joined. That's wonderful.
That's because I did not play chess with him last night at 12:30.
Shiranji, I was just wondering about what you just said. And the fact that you said that, how can you consciously, like, if you like want to jump into it consciously, it's not possible because on one hand, there's a duality here that, I am like this, but can I intrude upon myself and be like this? So that duality is something that is one struggles with. So I would like to make an observation that can I be an observer to my duality also? So here I'm bifurcating two concepts. One is the concept of participation, and one is the concept of observation. So can I observe myself participating in this duality, not be something or the other, but just observe my struggle in being both, in being in the trouble and in being trying to come out of it. So if I'm observing myself, and I think that is what also Sanjay ji may have meant, that if I am trying to observe myself in my own participation, then I can transform the situation, not consciously, but it will automatically get transformed like fear can get transformed. So the cessation of the self will happen when the self is not participating, when it is only observing. And when I'm observing, then I have cessation because there is no motive, there is no agenda, there is no stake for me anymore. In my observation, it is a neutral observation, it is a transcendent observation, and there is no stake. The stake comes when I'm participating. When I say, oh, I am Amit, I am like this, I must be like this, I must project this so that I can be appreciated, or I must project this, or I must be this for my own happiness. So there is a stake involved. But the moment I, divest from my participation into my observation mode, there is no more stake. I just look at myself wanting to enjoy the stakes without actually, having that stake. So that is my, that is my little observation. Could I communicate?
Yeah, of course. But let me ask you, Amit, suppose I'm in a state where I'm in complete bliss. I am in happiness. I am in fulfill. I am in joy. I don't even ask myself any other questions because I'm in fulfill. I'm in complete joyousness, a state of joyousness, in a very supreme sense. I'm saying not a day-to-day happiness. It's something where I've reached a stage where everything around me is love and happiness and everything in it. So I don't feel anything at that stage. I won't feel pain. I won't feel suffering. I won't feel the turmoil. I won't feel the inequations of living because I'm in a state where I don't see it. And I'm not saying this theoretically because suppose you're in a path. I'm just telling myself a decade earlier and a decade now, I feel I'm in a much more state of happiness than what I was a decade ago. Could be because I was still in that whole format of living in the sense of attainment and conflict and everything with it. So each of us could be reaching a stage in their life where we are still in it and not in it, like what you're saying, you're being in it, you're observing, you're being away. But the realizations and the foundations you're having with your purpose of living, which is different from what it is for somebody else. But suppose it reaches a stage where you're completely in happiness, in love, in fulfilled, then nothing else will matter to me at this stage. I mean, if K was always in that state, K wouldn't even think of talking about pain and suffering, which he doesn't feel. He's not supposed to be feeling of anything which is other than that state of tranquility. So is that a barometer for us? Is that some kind of a benchmark saying that I get up this morning and I'm in a complete state of bliss? I'm in love with the world, with the universe, with everything. So nothing else matters to me. I mean, at this stage, it doesn't matter if my breakfast my toast is a burnt up toast, or I don't have butter, or I don't have the music, or there is noise in our life, because I'm in that state. No, it makes it so much easier in different ways to tell yourself
Right.
I'm going towards a destination which should happen organically.
But you
Shaya,
know,
Add something to this?
yes, yes, Sanjay, carry on.
are we carrying forward the conditioned ideas that we had in the past, which we got from traditional paths of a state of absolute bliss, where there is no pain, there is no suffering? Are we carrying forward that same thing and trying to apply it to to case teachings? Because see, these are assumptions. The state of absolute bliss is an assumption unless one is actually in that state.
Absolutely.
So we don't know if such a state can ever exist. So, I mean, again, we are falling into the whole trap of chasing an assumption or trying to validate an assumption. Again, we are moving away from the reality of what is. And I mean, I personally feel there's a very small word which we need to understand, and that is resistance. Without getting into philosophical questions, a very common thing that we often experience in life is resistance, a feeling of resistance when we meet somebody, when we're talking to somebody, when we think about something, when we're about to do something. There is a certain resistance. And that resistance, I feel, is a strong indicator of our conditioning. And if one can observe the resistance and also the source of the resistance, I think that can be helpful in unraveling the self that has been built up over the years. So that one may experience at least some degree of freedom.
It's well said, Sanjay. Yeah.
Also, Sayan, I just want to add one bit before somebody else chips in. This morning on one WhatsApp group, a very interesting discussion was going on, because somebody said something about the origin of the word Om, implying that, it has its origins in Hindu, this thing, implying therefore a certain sense of pride. And it led to a ridiculous discussion about, what. And it occurred to me that, I think one could instantly see that, like the issue there was, if there is something that you discover for yourself, it doesn't matter who points it out, whether it's Krishnamurti or Alan Watts or whoever it may be. But I think that's something, the big the big plus for me, actually, after having come into contact with Krishna's teachings, is the ability to see such simple things. The business of fragmentation right at my very source. And we almost brush it aside. Well, that can't be a big problem. There's nothing wrong in being proud of being this or being that. But every little bit actually contributes to that conditioning. So much of that. I just found it very interesting to point that out. Sometimes it's not the grand things about things, but some things that you can observe in day-to-day things as they're happening all around you.
That's why I love your morning walks by the lakes. And yeah.
Yes.
Asha, would you like to add something? I'd love to hear you.
I'm listening to things. I must admit, firstly, I don't see this distinction between the inner and the outer. I don't. I mean, when I look at it for myself, I see that the disorder, I can look around my room now and see the disorder in just my physical surroundings, or in my health, or in my relationships. And when I can also see that is an outcome of the disorder in my thinking. And the other way around too, the disorder in my thinking and the conflicts and energy that is being wasted in things that are at odds with each other. All these are part of one movement, inner and outer. They're not one thing in conflict with another. There is really a movement from the inner to the outer and the outer to the inner happening all the time. So I don't see a contradiction in that sense. Also, I think as Sanjay ji was saying, whether we like it or not, particularly if you are from an Indian tradition, then we have developed lots of ideas what it is to be in the state of bliss or moksha or nirvana or liberation, or different ways of looking at it have different names of some kind of super consciousness or awareness or intelligence, if you want to use Krishnaji's word. It's we have an idea of what it means to be in that state. And we have even imbibed this unconsciously. My grandmother used to tell me tales. So it's there. And so is the idea of striving, the idea of working towards this. That's also fairly firmly rooted. So now Krishnamurti comes along and says, you can try as much as you like. You'll never get it because it isn't got by trying. So, like a funny film I saw once, where one person is saying, I'm trying to stop trying. So then we try to stop trying. So this is so we have to really stay with this challenge. It is a huge challenge. Nobody can tell us how. It's up to us. Even Krishnamurti is saying, look, don't take what I'm saying. Why are you even accepting his word? That is what you need to do, or that is what is going to be effective. You shouldn't be. You have to look at it for yourself. And that is what is your part in this is that you need to look and examine everything. And where do you examine this? In the self. And which is the self that is most readily available to you is yourself. So you have to look at yourself. And what does it mean to look at oneself? How does one see oneself? We see ourselves mostly in relationship, in human relationship, in relation to things, because we can sit under a tree and we can silence our mind and we can come to some state which we imagine is some kind of bliss or serenity, but that's because we are removing ourselves from contact from a lot of things. Not saying it's a wrong thing to do or anything like that. I'm just saying that along comes my son and starts saying something to me, and I get upset or something like that, and that reveals to me that something was lurking in the background. So we are just imagining that we are seeing. What we are seeing mostly, what we are mostly aware of, is the superficial layers of our consciousness. What we think of as thinking, right? But thinking is not all of thought. Thinking is just a process that I can be aware of fairly easily. There is a lot happening in the background that is waiting. I'm quiet just now, but I can become angry because somewhere buried deep is anger. So this question of really becoming aware of the totality is not a trivial one. It requires a lot of intensity and a lot of awareness. And Krishnaji is very clear about this. He says, why don't you give attention to this like you give to studying mathematics or any work that you're working on? Why don't you give attention to this? Right? And certainly at Brockwood, when he was alive, he would challenge the staff. He even said, take the best time of your day, because this is the most important thing you do, is this kind of thing, and find your way to examine, to learn about this, but give the best time of the day that you have to this, because everything flows from this capacity of yours if intelligence is active in your life. So this is, I think, a problem we have. We tend to give importance to everyday things, and we think of the understanding of the self, the understanding of the question of intelligence or of a different kind of sensibility or awareness. We don't give the number one priority in our life. So this is beginning to answer the question of why we don't. Because beginning to recognize and see the whole of thought, the whole of consciousness is a challenging thing. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do it, nor does it mean that we don't do it. See, once again, we have to be careful about this. Because the idea of the cessation of self, or the ending of the self, or freedom from the self, however you want to think about it, what does it actually mean? Does it mean that, or when we say thought is a problem, does it mean you're completely thoughtless? There's no thought going on? Does it mean that there is no way in which you're thinking of a self? What does it mean? Are you saying, now it's pretty clear to everybody that part of the self, I mean, I speak English, right? Other people speak other languages. And does the cessation of the self mean that that's part of the self? It's recorded in my brain, it's in my memory, that's why I can speak English. So do I stop being able to speak English because the self has come to an end? Now, my understanding of this is that the action of the self, of thought, is essentially mechanical. That is to say, it will go on automatically. You meet somebody, you will greet them in a certain way in which you have learned to greet people. You will say hello, how are you, whatever. You know, there is a large element of the self. Even the work that you do is mechanical. Even the rising of anger or violence within self is mechanical. So it's a machine that is running, like an engine that is switched on and is running. It's running. Now the question is this just running on automatic? Is it on autopilot? You know, like a plane that's flying. Most of the time you fly in a plane and the pilot can walk around because it's an autopilot. Nobody's going to sit there with his hand on the controls all the time. So it's an autopilot, but it'll only go straight on in the direction that is set for it, as long as it's on autopilot. So, and if you understand Krishnamurti, what he's saying is that the role of intelligence can work on the self, and it has to work on the self. When Krishnamurti is speaking, he's, you know, when he goes to travels between countries, then he has to go to the lane that says he has an Indian passport. So in that sense, he has to be an Indian. So, but it's not being directed by that. Whatever he's saying, it's actually intelligence. And one thing he's very clear about, that no matter how thought tries, it will be just thinking. It'll just be caught up in that movement of thought. That is what thought does, which we can see. If we give attention to thought, we can see this is what thought does. And that's its function. And I don't want to make it evil or anything. That's its function. So, but the question is it being directed by intelligence? And as people have been saying, the essential element of intelligence is observation, is a perception without judgment, without choice, without memory interfering, and so on. So as long as intelligence is acting, then whatever action the thought takes, you know, in everyday life, because we are talking, I mean, eventually our concern is how do we act in everyday life? What is the right action in every day. That is what we are concerned with. Okay, how will my actions not lead to more confusion and so on, and perhaps lead to something else? So this is the essential question is, self is functioning, but is it on autopilot? Or is intelligence at the controls and can direct it and change it and move it in a different way? And that is,
sorry, Harsh. Sorry. Carry on, Harsh. Carry on.
So
carry on, Harsh. Carry on.
Okay, so that's what I see. Now here is another problem from my understanding of Krishnamurti. He says very clearly, you can't. There's no end point. See, one of the problems we're talking about with words is talking about the ending of the self. You see the feeling that one day the self will end. That today, or even if you're not consciously going for that, you're thinking, one day understanding will dawn on me, will come to me without any effort tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow, right? But that is not in fact, if Krishnamurti says anything, he says something that is even more challenging. He says, you have to start with intelligence, because you can't even look at the self unless intelligence is in operation. Otherwise, it's one part, it's thought looking at itself, it's one part of thought looking at another part of thought. And that is always going to be partial. That has the danger of distortion, because thought distorts. We can see this, that our old ideas and traditions and all of those that is already in our mind, that affects what we see, what we perceive. I mean, it's very easy to see, and this happens below the level of our consciousness. You look at you must have seen optical illusions and so on, where they show you pictures where two things are actually the same size, but because the background is different, one looks larger than the other. And you would say it looks larger than the other, but your brain is at all the time processing everything that you come and is trying to fit it into what it already knows. There's a story that when Columbus's ships first appeared on the horizon in the West Indies, when he was sailing to discover America, when the people who lived on the island saw the ships, they didn't see them. They couldn't see them, because in their perceptual apparatus, there was no way of saying that there's something there. So it was like an apparition, or they discounted it. They said, we're not seeing these ships because such things don't exist. So the preconceptions of our mind will prevent us from seeing the truth of the self. So this is one of those impossible questions that Krishna used to ask.
Thank you for
before you can even start looking at the self, you have to.
You mentioned, Harsh. You mentioned. You mentioned about not trying. Just a brief thing. I think others might want to talk as well. If you heard of the poet Charles Bowerski, he's an American poet.
Yes.
Poet. He came from the working class, and he's written a lot of books and poetry. And on his grave, he had told his family and friends and all, you must put the inscription, do not try.
Yes.
And later on, he was asked, I mean, not he was asked, because it was there, everybody saw it on the grave. And they asked the family and friends. And so some of the writers whom were interviewed, he said, that you have this grand illusion that you create all this piece of writing. That's why you produce mediocrity. Sure. You stand back. If you're not able to get it, wait. If you still don't get it, wait a little more. But do things without a motive, for heaven's sake. So that interview was a real classic. And it brought back memories of Krishnaji also. And the point you were making about do not try, even in a mundane thing like writing.
Yes.
What you're saying is that the more you try, the more you actually generate things from your memory, basically. And you block, maybe, I don't know, I think that's the impression I got, because it's a very unusual thing to have written on the grave, do not try.
True, but I think what you're saying is very important, even in something, certainly in writing, in poetry, And music. Now, who is a good musician? Anybody can learn the notes and play the notes and so on, and try and repeat tunes that they have heard before. All that is thought and memory. But the most famous musicians are the ones who have contact with what music is about the feelings. So they are now directly experiencing the feelings. And the rest of it, and all the skills they've developed, is merely the vehicle by which they're expressing their direct perception of what is going on.
Right.
So, and that is what the best musician is. So we know this actually. And the same thing with the teachings. It's going to be the direct perception, the direct observation of what is going on, and not secondhand. That is important.
Absolutely. So well said.
Durga, we haven't seen you on camera yet. Durga, are you able to put on your video or your camera? Durga Rani is there. Can you hear us, Durga?
Deepika's video
Audio is a problem. I see her.
Hugo, you want to say something?
Well, I was thinking about what usually Krishnamurti used to say about is more important about meditation, like not how to meditate, but to have a meditative mind, right? So if you see the things as they are, as he was mentioning right now, if you see the things clear, and if you can use the pointers, Krishnamurti's teachings as pointers to get rid of the obstacles, then maybe you can be in touch with that non-verbal state, and that non-verbal state might bring that's something special, right? That I have been with kids all my life, and I really when I'm with children, I really can see myself in this mirror of relation, right? So I'm really very, very grateful to the kids because, of course, they have their own personalities and their own egos, like all of us we have, but they have also this pureness, and that helps you to sometimes to see things more clear, right? And relating this to martial arts, because I'm a martial artist, and is what we were talking last time about is more important in martial arts, more than the technique, is to be in this no mind state. And when you are in that no mind state is what maybe Krishnaji used to say, like act. So you can see the things exactly as they are and you act. And acting does not come from memory, right? So the techniques you already memorized, they are not important. Of course, you need to practice, right? But and relating to this also, usually like people who likes Krishnamurti, they usually some other people say like people who like Krishnamurti, they are very intellectual, they are very, maybe too square mind. So I think that Krishnamurti was trying to convey completely something different, right? Like you need to see by yourself how to be in contact with that state, and that state is renewing is changing all the time. So well, that's one first comment. I'm okay so far.
Thank you. Harsha, would you like to say a few words?
I don't know what to say now, because I feel that, it is an instant, what you say, he always talked about instant awareness, So I think that whenever we are experiencing a situation where we are feeling that some part of us is getting disturbed in our normal state, it is possible now to look at the situation and see it from a perspective which is not your ego standpoint also. The ego is there, but there is a higher perspective from the sense that you can shift from your ego stance and see it from a clearer limelight. And I think that is one of the books I very vaguely read many, many years ago when the children were studying in school, The Awakening of Intelligence. And in that, he had many dialogues with so many of the great masters. And all the time, I think that I was also feeling the same journey now also, that we meet so many teachers, today's work offering a lot, but our own journey is our very own. And nobody can walk that path for us. We have to work on ourselves to realize the depths of what he wanted to convey. And your own understanding will only bring the clarity to you in your life. Words, he would always say, I remember, words are not the thing. So, the actuality of each experience is what you go through. And of course, the more you try to read him, the more like how we are now connecting with him. These are all efforts we are making to widen our own horizons. Absolutely. You see, each one's point of view is so varied and so beautiful. And I think that, these sessions will serve a lot of purpose where each one will be unfolding his own self, even afterwards also. And in the process now also, we are widening ourselves a lot. And this is what I wanted to share with you.
So well said. Thank you. Sudeshna, sorry, you had put up your hand earlier. I missed that. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, that was a little while ago. There was a thread with thought. Actually, when I observe myself, one thing I get caught is the way I have been brought up. I feel I always have to do something. Maybe, and I am not happy with the way I am. That is why I always get caught in the past or in the future. Like, suppose my past could have been like this, and it has not been like this, so there is misery. Or in the future, I must be more secure. So, as I observe myself, I see that there are times when I'm totally caught up either in the past or in the future. And I don't accept myself. Then there is misery, and then there is conflict, and whatever names you give to it. So if I can completely, if there are times it doesn't happen 24 hours due to whatever reason, I don't know. But if there are times where I can completely accept myself the way I am, so automatically the future and the past is wiped out. And I am just, I am. I cannot say about the times when I'm aware. I cannot describe. I can talk about the times when I'm not aware. So this continuously wanting to improve the future and therefore think about the past, this is a conditioning. We have to stay in a society, and everything is not hanging from the trees. We have to go out and earn, not only earn, have a good house and whatever. So continuously, I feel we are struggling with ourselves. So if I can completely, the sense of self is there because I'm not comfortable somehow with myself. I'm caught up in improving, even if it's for more peace or better understanding or whatever we call it. That is also, I'm continuously struggling with myself. There I get caught. So if I can completely, I feel, accept myself, automatically the psychological, this future and past will be wiped out. And there's nothing to be done then. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So I'm still, again, I'm saying I'm still working on it. But yeah, this is the way I am caught up in. This is what I wanted to say. Whatever you say, time or, but I am stuck. And that is because I cannot accept myself the way I am, or maybe these are words, and that's why I get caught in the future and the past. In order to improve the past, I am wanting a better future or whatever. So if I can completely accept, okay, if I have felt angry or I am angry, it's okay. But somehow I want to be in a state where I will never feel angry. And then there is conflict.
Okay, that's well. But I'm again going back and requesting Ashna, are you going to? We need to hear you. I don't know if everybody knows this, Kamalji. Her dad got across K to Calcutta for the first time in 1982 at Hastings College. And that's the transformation which has happened in my life, because I went for that talk and she was there for that too also. So this has been years back. Yeah. Would you like to tell us something about that?
Yeah. Goodness me. I mean, there's so many people here that have such a deep connection, including Harsh. I mean, I've known and worked with Harsh since 2001 at Brockwood, and Kenneth as well. So it's a kind of reunion, Shanda. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hello? Okay. Yeah, so amazing stuff. So I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I don't know if I can say anything useful. But coming back to the original point of, the conflict between what's on the written page, Krishnaji's words, and our everyday sort of, to use a mundane word, mundane life. I guess my 2 cents would be that from the very beginning, I was sort of, so much of Krishnaji was in a way thrust down my throat, so to speak, ever since I can remember. I was born, and the moment I could decipher sentences, there was Krishnamurti in the background. That I found sort of not doing or non-effort to be the right comportment from my side. So I sort of incorporated just about everything, even things that were apparently in conflict. I mean, my mother came from a Sufi background. So sort of interacting with her and being immersed in Umar Khayyam and a kind of ecstatic poetry all the time would seem like a contradiction, because it was a very different kind of culture altogether, if I might use the word culture. But at the highest level, I didn't find a conflict with Krishnaji at all, the difference between inner, outer. It was also about non-effort, so to speak. In fact, does love require effort? And I liked what you said earlier, this whole maybe even cultural tendency in us to want to aspire to bliss. Baba, before he died or while he was on his deathbed, just smiled at me. And he said, Ashna, just don't ever be afraid of pain. Learn to cradle it like a baby in your arms. So thinking about that, just, my entire sense of what nirvana meant or what bliss meant sort of was turned on its head. So I think I have incorporated to some extent a kind of syncretic attitude. That means just absorb what is good, and your intuition will direct you. So, it doesn't have to be necessarily Krishnaji. So I might have read when I grew up, and certainly under the influence of Harsh and company, commentaries on living and all of his works, journals, etc., etc. But I wasn't ever resistant, Shayanda, to anything else. So a lot of Sufism, and I now live in Sikkim, and there are a whole lot of very peculiar sort of cultures, including shamanic Dogbu culture, very weird. So I don't separate myself from that either. I mean, maybe from a point of view of sort of, being the other, being the cultural other, I find it even very, very entertaining. But I love it. I love how people in the middle of winter don't heat up their houses. And I said that, how can you survive in Sikkim without being cold? So they said, oh, we are cold. I said, I am not going to do anything about it. And they just looked at me like I came from some other planet. I mean, why would you do anything about changing the state of nature around you? So if you're freezing and you're cold, you're meant to be cold. So something like that was so different from, the Bengali culture of wearing, lapeting, just putting all kinds of warm woolies, even in November, that I learned something even just the other day. So what I meant to say is something along the lines of what Sanjay has been also trying to say, is the art of not doing sort of allows a space for a kind of adjustment of order within and order without. And this, what we're having right now, is part of that. I'm so grateful and I feel so privileged to have the Zoom meeting, although the Zoom platform, it feels very strange. I actually want to kind of touch everybody. But yes, but thank you.
You missed, Ashna, you missed one particular clothing. That's in Calcutta, you have the monkey cap. That's the inevitable monkey cap is, very much in evidence in November also.
Absolutely.
November, you have a monkey cap.
Absolutely, Suresh.
Ashna, small trivia. Ashna's aunt used to teach my wife English in Brabon, Lady Brabon College. And it's amazing. And when I know this is a bit personal, but I can't stop sharing this. So when I showed the picture of Ashna's mother to Arpita, she said, "Oh my God, she's still the same." And how old is she now? She's 90 years old. She's 90, right?
90.
So she could recognize her from 30 years, 40 years earlier, whatever. So it's unbelievable that even transformation, the outward transformation doesn't, change the inner connects which one has with the individual over all these years. So it's unbelievable.
So anybody else wants to say something? Otherwise, we'll end at 12:30 on the schedule, because it does.
I'd like to say something brief. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I think at one point somebody talked about the antidote.
Yes.
Krishnamurti has.
Yes.
He doesn't tell us about the antidote. So I would like to make an observation about listening to Krishnamurti. See, if you listen, because somehow the antidote is contained there. Other people have said this too, that there is something subtle there. There is something that's beyond the words that he's essentially talking about. In a way, if you listen to a talk, he'll start with very ordinary things. He will start by saying that there is problems in the world, there's problems in a relationship, you have a difficulty with your wife or husband, or talk about wars or about computers taking over. And then he develops from there slowly until and going deeper all the time and taking your thinking deeper and deeper and looking at what reason that is behind it and recognizing that this is all an expression of what is happening in consciousness, in the consciousness of the world. That is like this. So this is the general progression of a talk. And at times this talk seems to be about relationship, or it seems to be about violence or something like that, because that is the subject of the talk. But by the time the talk reaches its end, especially if you're listening to or looking at a video, you'll notice that there is a deep silence, that the audience has fallen completely silent. And so I would suggest that actually dwelling too much on the words that Krishnamurti is saying is missing the point. There is one talk, I think it's in silence sometimes, when he talks the whole way through, and at the end there is a profound silence and he's talking very slowly, and then he says, this is meditation. He has not mentioned meditation the whole thing through. So what he's saying, that the state of mind that we have come to now, this is the meditative state of mind. And his whole effort in the talk, whatever it may have been about, has been to bring you to that meditative state of mind. And this is meditation. So one can get caught up in the words and tell oneself, this is what he says about relationship, or this is what he says about love, or this is what he says about death. but we mustn't miss the state of mind that is really what he's talking about.
Absolutely.
And bringing you to.
Well said. Absolutely.
I saw a very nice, somebody sent a video clipping of Krishnaji's last words at Chennai. And it was so beautiful. It was just a 2.5 minute clip. It was beautiful for its sheer simplicity. You know, what he said there was that, you know, if you have a problem with your thought process, get it sorted out. If you have a problem of any sort, sort it out. Because unless you have sorted things out, you cannot enter the world of the sacred, or something to that effect. But I think that was so beautiful, because I take Krishnaji to be saying that you actually, your own world is the real problem. I mean, your own world meaning your own structure. And that indeed very often is our comfort zone. We don't want to do anything about it. And at that time, I think those last words were quite stunning, because I think I remember that, to say that you better sort it out, because there's no way you will have any idea of what the sacred is all about unless all that is sorted out. It's very beautiful, actually. Maybe I'll send that clip also along with the email.
So may I make a response to that?
Yes.
So something that's perfectly true. We have to start with ourselves. We have to look at ourselves. But another statement that he made that struck me was, if you are only concerned with your own transformation, then that is essentially a very small thing. And you won't have much energy because you're only looking at a small thing. But if you're concerned with the transformation of the consciousness of humanity, then perhaps you will change. So, yes, it's always double-sided. We have to look at ourselves, but we have to be concerned with the transformation of humanity.
I think we can end on that real positive note.
Yeah. I think I just to say that, you know, after this, I'll send off an email with all the, you know, we missed the video, which I'll send the link, which is a very nice video. I'll also send another link, which is also very nice, you know, where he talks about getting to the root of thought. And it's also, both are 12 minutes, so that's a big advantage, because, you know, short videos are easy to see. And I think we'll keep on, you know, sort of doing these programs. We may not be perfect, you know, we will have glitches and, you know, they may not work out perfectly, but I think the good thing is that, you know, we want people to get together and talk about these things rather than just listen. Listen to a speaker, whether it's a speaker or even Krishnaji, actually, because we're doing the same thing. Whether we listen to Krishnaji or a speaker on the dais, we do the same thing. But the idea is, if it doesn't really come from, and, you know, Yash is a very profound, I mean, he's very, very vocal in many of these discussions. Today he's very quiet, Yash Jain. So maybe next time we'll listen to more of Yash.
And we haven't heard Kenneth also this time. Yeah.
Yes, Kenneth also. That's right. Kenneth hasn't said a word, Kenneth.
Would you like to unmute yourself? I'll just unmute him.
Kenneth, you need to unmute.
Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's so much of it, of course, sounds repetitive. It's like paraphrasing, but I presume the work must go on. As Krishnaji would say, get your house in order. I would like to suggest, though, that perhaps when we do have a certain understanding of something, it can be put into action. Perhaps I'm only talking about in the practical sense, because there's so much that's so chaotic and so discordant and causing all the problems that we're having, that it's like doing social work. You know, I think it is necessary, but it may not, of course, deal with the root cause. So really, it's something I read. I won't tell you the author. It was like, live your understanding. Live your understanding. You might still be wrong, but you must go through that somehow. Put it into action, so to speak. I mean, so long as obviously it's not going to cause any harm to anyone, that kind of thing. So,
Thanks, Kenneth. Thanks.
Thank you.
So with that, thanks to everybody for attending this morning's program. And let's see what we have next. We'll try to see what we have next. We could have another speaker or maybe another discussion. So we'll see where we go from here. But thanks to everybody. Thanks to us for making it at the last moment.
Yes, that was nice.
Thanks to Kenneth.
Can I ask you a question? Do you normally meet at this time?
Yeah, no, it's actually something we just sort of, we decide whether it's 11 o'clock is better, but 11 o'clock seems to suit a lot of people.
I joined you at the last minute because there is another group, the Indore group, that I normally join at this time on Sundays.
Yes,
and they
yes,
decided not to have their thing earlier at 9:30.
And before we conclude, I just want to say, be surprised for Joyita, but belated happy birthday. It was her birthday yesterday.
Oh,
so I saw on Facebook.
All the best.
Thank you. Overwhelmed by all the greetings and all the love that I received. Yes. And I'm continuing to receive till today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And on that happy note.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Stay well, stay safe, and let's be in touch soon.
See you soon again.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, Ashna. Bye, Ashna.
Bye.
Bye, Harsha. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Goodbye.
everyone. Bye.